How do you view the bilateral relationship between Indonesia and the Netherlands so far?
So for the Netherlands, Indonesia is not only a huge country in itself, but it's also a gateway to Southeast Asia and other parts of Asia. And we are also, as the Netherlands, manifesting ourselves as a gateway for Indonesia to the rest of the European market. One of the elements I like so much about the program is that it also aims to develop local agriculture, local economies, to produce the school meals. I think it's an excellent idea. And so it's a lot about capacity building and knowledge transfer.
Can you reiterate maybe the commitment of the Dutch government in implementing this process?
There's a really good process now in place with two repatriation committees that look at, on both sides, that look at requests, that make research on the provenance of artifacts and that make sure that these artifacts are returned to Indonesia.
Pemirsa, saat bicara hubungan antara Indonesia dan Belanda, tentu ada begitu banyak nilai sejarah yang terkandung di dalamnya. Namun di era modern saat ini, hubungan kedua negara telah begitu berkembang, tentunya menjadi hubungan yang saling membangun antara Indonesia dan juga Belanda. Selamat datang di International Corner Antara pemirsa, saya Arya Sindiara. Hari ini telah bergabung bersama saya, Duta Besar Belanda untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Mark Gerritsen. Mr. Ambassador, welcome to Indonesia.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to sit down and talk with us today. Perhaps I'd like to start as you are starting your term here in Indonesia. What is your impression of living in Indonesia so far? Is there anything that has stood out to you, that impressed you so far?
Oh, there's so much that impressed me already in these first few weeks that I'm here. I feel at home because people are cheerful, people are warm, people are very welcoming. What I really notice is that Indonesia has a very positive energy. It has to do with all the young people, the cheerfulness, joyfulness. That gives us a good feeling as well as visitors here. We are really made to be feel at home.
Mr. Ambassador, speaking of your bucket list in Indonesia, I heard that you have already hiked the Rinjani Mountain in Nusa Tenggara Barat. How was that experience for you? You have to tell me everything.
That was a wonderful experience. I was with my family on Lombok, and we decided to climb Mount Rinjani, and we heard so many good stories about it. But what we experienced was even better. It was not only wonderful because of the scenery from up there, looking at the crater lake and seeing with the sunrise the island of Bali and the island of Flores on both sides, but also to see so many young Indonesians eagerly and proudly climbing this great mountain. Camping on the ridge and then getting up in the middle of the night to do the last stretch. It was quite exciting and also challenging. It was cold and windy and slippery, but at the same time it was an experience I wouldn't want to miss.
So what's next on your list? Are you going to do other mountains as well?
I love mountains, but I also like sailing. I like culture, so maybe I would like to go to well, what shall I say? I'd like to go to Ambon. I would like to visit the east of the country, but also I like to go to Aceh. I think there's too much to mention, but any suggestion you can make, I'm really open to that because I'm here for a number of years and I really want to experience those things that Indonesians are proud of.
All right. Considering our long-standing historical relationship between Indonesia and the Netherlands, I'm curious as to what is the general view from the Dutch people towards Indonesia and also towards Indonesians.
The view of Dutch people that Dutch people have of Indonesians is very favorable. That has to do with different things. One, it has to do with the fact that Indonesians have relatives in the Netherlands. We feel like your brothers and sisters. We see Indonesians in the Netherlands as Dutch, and that is one. But also we see Indonesians as a people that is warm and of course also welcoming, as I said earlier. But it's also a country that has this unique diversity, and it is really proud to show that diversity. And Dutch people feel that, so they're really keen to get to know this. And thirdly, we know, of course, Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world, and it is maintaining this kind of Islam in a very tolerant way. And I think it is Indonesians are open to other people, are open to working together, interaction between different cultures, different beliefs, because that is of course what you also experience in Indonesia itself, unity in diversity. So we see from the Netherlands Indonesia as a great example of unity in diversity.
Right, and you've also mentioned the warmth and maybe the hospitality of Indonesians. Is that something that Dutch people also are familiar with over there?
Well, there are more than 400 Indonesian restaurants in the Netherlands, and they are 400, right? Wow. And it's really always, I would say, a big pleasure to visit Indonesian restaurants. For Dutch people, going to an Indonesian restaurant, it's a very common thing to do because there are so many of them, and they have been there for a very long time, and they keep reinventing themselves. So there are, I would say, restaurants that have been there already for 40 years, but that had a total makeover, very hip and happening Indonesian restaurants. I visited one before coming here, and for Dutch people, going to an Indonesian restaurant it's always a highlight.
Right. So is that do you have your favorite Indonesian spots then in the Netherlands?
Well, there's one restaurant that I have in mind. Particularly, it's called Blauw, and it's in Utrecht. I can really recommend it. It's really top notch.
What's your favorite dish then?
For me, it's gado-gado.
Good one, very, very good one. Mr. Ambassador, last one for this segment, and maybe just a little bit more serious. How do you view the bilateral relationship between Indonesia and the Netherlands so far?
It's excellent. It's very wide, and it's something that really shows that we have each other. We have much to offer to one another. So for the Netherlands, Indonesia is not only a huge country in itself, but it's also a gateway to Southeast Asia and other parts of Asia. And we are also, as the Netherlands, manifesting ourselves as a gateway for Indonesia to the rest of the European market with our big ports and our big logistics sector. We're really in a good place to work together even more.
I'd like to jump into our bilateral relationships between Indonesia and the Netherlands. What areas will you focus on to strengthen the cooperation between our two countries, especially maybe in line with the implementation of the 8 main missions of President Subianto's Astachita?
The priorities that the new president has set out for Indonesia are very important and very ambitious. And in this volatile world, it's very understandable and very wise to focus on self-sufficiency, on developing human resources, on strengthening Indonesia's independence. I think it's something that also in Europe we are trying to do, being more autonomous given the volatility. But also if you look back at recent history, for instance during COVID, we realized we need to really be able, for instance, to produce vaccines for ourselves and not be too dependent on others. At the same time, to get there, you need to cooperate, and that's where we think we can also play a role. So, for instance, the ambitions of President Prabowo for food self-sufficiency or energy self-sufficiency, we have ample experience with that, and we're really keen to work with Indonesia on that, and we're eagerly engaging with the authorities on this.
So maybe just at this beginning of your term, what are the first initial steps that you're taking to further that cooperation that you mentioned before?
Well, it's building on that what is already there. So we have very good cooperation when it comes to food, when it comes to also water management, when it comes to other sectors. We've worked together for a long time, not only government to government, but also from the private sector. There are, for instance, big investments from Dutch companies in the dairy sector, in the water management sector, but also in the health sector. Different companies that really provide knowledge, but also production here. So that also fits in well with another priority of the president, which is downstreaming, creating jobs, etc. So for us, we see that as a win-win situation.
And one of the main programs of President Subianto is, of course, the free meals and free lunches. How do you see that being implemented and contributing to the development of human resources?
Right. Well, there are, of course, challenges, and rightfully the president said, let's try to eradicate severe hunger, but also let's make sure every school-going child gets at least one school meal per day. And that, of course, will also fight stunting, and will make clear that Indonesians, young Indonesians, have more opportunities to learn and to contribute to Indonesia's prosperity in the future. It's a huge challenge also because Indonesia, of course, is a country with a very unique geography with all the different islands, so logistics is also quite a challenge. But one of the elements I like so much about the program is that it also aims to develop local agriculture, local economies to produce the school meals. I think it's an excellent idea, and so it's a lot about capacity building and knowledge transfer, and that's something that we're good at and that we're really happy to contribute.
Yeah, I'd like to just circle back to the Astacita of President Prabowo, which encourage Indonesia as an independent and resilient nation, which is the theme of this segment here, and that's through self-sufficiency. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on how maybe specific projects or programs that the Netherlands can be involved in those areas?
Right, so the self-sufficiency, you could also call that strategic autonomy or open strategic autonomy, because you need to cooperate with each other to get where you want to go. So one specific example is the company of Frisian Flag. It's a Dutch, originally Dutch company, and they have made a major investment just south of Jakarta. There's a big dairy factory there, and from that factory they might be able to contribute to the school meals program, because of course having milk in that package is really important.
And what about the food estate program that you mentioned before?
Right, so what is being produced there are vegetables and other crops that also make sure children get a very diverse diet with vitamins, with all the nutritious ingredients that you need to become strong, to be also have a healthy lifestyle. I think that's another aspect also to highlight, right? It's not only about what you take in, but also a healthy lifestyle that really helps to reach the targets.
Okay. Mr. Ambassador, now I'd like to discuss some challenges maybe that our two countries are facing which include climate change and also the rising levels of seawater. How can we collaborate to mitigate the effects of these climate-induced issues? And in your opinion, how can the Netherlands, or what can the Netherlands offer Indonesia, perhaps in terms of lesson learned, to face these challenges?
Right. Well, it's a global challenge, right? Climate change we all face the difficulties that come with climate change, rising sea levels, for instance. We have that in the Netherlands also, and we try to do two things: mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation means making sure that you don't contribute more to CO2 emissions, and for instance, by furthering the energy transition, shifting towards clean energy, towards renewable energy. We have, for instance, ample experience in the wind energy and also geothermal energy and different kinds of energy. You need a very diverse energy mix. And we could work on that with you and with other countries, right? There's the huge JET-P program that was commissioned by the G7 countries, and we are a supporter of that program and are working with authorities here in Indonesia to make that happen. So the energy transition, but also you talked about water management. That is, of course, also very much needed to adapt to the fact that climate change is here, right? We cannot deny that, and that is something on which we have different knowledge institutes, universities, but also companies and consultancies that work together with the Indonesian water management institutions to come up, for instance, with a solution for the north coast of Java, the giant seawall, if you want, and how to come up with a solution that is really helping the local communities, that is making Jakarta safer for inundations, but also how to manage water flows coming from the mountains, water beds, etc. So it's a very, I would say, broad approach that you need to tackle the problem. So and we're again, as I said, keen to work with Indonesia on that.
Right, but how do you see Indonesia's energy transition efforts or plans so far? Do you think it's ambitious enough, or what still needs to be done?
Well, we really hope that Indonesia will come up with a very ambitious nationally determined contribution to the COP Paris Agreement. So you can always set the mark higher. That's also something we tell ourselves, right? It's we need ambition to tackle the problem of climate change. We see that Indonesia is getting really started with the energy transition, but it's not there yet, right? I think, and nor are we, right? We are really we need to stimulate each other to do more and to really invest in clean energy. And there are reports that show that if you invest in clean energy now, it will save you a lot of money down the road. So the earlier you invest, the more economic it is.
Right. Do you think in the next 5 years of the new administration, a lot can be done too?
Absolutely, absolutely. The potential is huge, not only for shifting to other types of energy, renewable energy. Geothermal, for instance, Indonesia has a huge potential for that. But also CO2 carbon capture and storage could be done, right, from fossil fuel power plants, for instance, capturing the CO2 and storing them under the ground. And Indonesia has a unique geological situation where it can really store a lot of money. So there is an ambition on the Indonesian side to make Indonesia a world leader when it comes to storage of CO2, and we're really keen to see that happen.
Right. Mr. Ambassador, I'd like to jump right into our cooperation in the cultural field. Especially now, we know that there is this repatriation going on of a number of cultural objects from Indonesia that are now still in the Netherlands. Can you reiterate maybe the commitment of the Dutch government in implementing this process?
Sure. Culture is one of the fields in which we cooperate already closely for a very long time. And we're really happy that the new Minister of Culture, Mr. Fadlizon, has also expressed his eagerness to continue this. We have here the Erasmus House, which is our cultural center with a library, but also a theater and an exposition hall. And in Amsterdam, Indonesia has opened the Indonesia House Amsterdam for culture and other exchanges. So we're really working together intensively. You asked about repatriatie, a very important topic. We have expressed and we reiterate our commitment to make sure that artifacts that belong here are returned with no further ado. There's a really good process now in place with two repatriatie committees that look at, on both sides, that look at requests, that make research on the provenance of artifacts, and that make sure that these artifacts are returned to Indonesia. That has happened already several times in the past, and another batch of artifacts will be returned in December. And there's a lot of spin-off from that close cooperation. It's not only the repatriatie, which is important in itself, but it's also about cultural exchange between researchers. Exhibitions are developed on the basis of the research that's being done, and there's also capacity building because we work together in the museology business, so to say. So to make sure that we learn from Indonesian museums and Indonesian museums learn from Dutch museums.
Right. So you would say that this repatriatie process is almost birthing yet another cultural cooperation between Indonesia and the Netherlands. How can the two countries take that momentum to even further that cooperation?
Well, we're really proud of it because it's a way of looking at our I would say shared cultural history, and that better insight in what we have exchanged and how things have come where we are now. That insight helps us also in other fields. We work together in the field of performing arts, of architecture, of different fields, and having these close ties between each other really helps to dig in even further. There was a wonderful architecture exhibit, for instance, about architecture, showing that Amsterdam architecture, the so-called Amsterdam School, has gotten inspiration from batik pattern, for instance. The exhibit is on display right now here at the Erasmus House, but also the other way around. We see also that Indonesian architects that studied in the Netherlands have designed fabulous houses that can be seen here in Jakarta, in Bandung, in Semarang, and in many other places.
Right. Mr. Ambassador, in terms of education cooperation, are there any plans to increase the scholarship programs or perhaps student exchange for Indonesian students? I know from personal experience alone that a lot of my close relatives and colleagues are very eager to pursue studies in the Netherlands. So what's the plan for this?
Right. The plan is that we'll have scholarship programs also in the future. We're really happy that we are able to offer that and continue to do so. We know Indonesian students like to study in the Netherlands, but it's also there a two-way street. So there are 3 universities from the Netherlands, Leiden, Delft and Erasmus University Rotterdam, that send students to a consortium of 5 Indonesian universities, including Universitas Indonesia. And Dutch students at the moment follow a minor in sustainable futures studies here in Jakarta or in Depok, and that really leads to great exchanges. But if you zoom out, you can really see that having so many people in Indonesia that have studied in the Netherlands and vice versa really is more or less the backbone of our cooperation. So we are keen to continue that.
Right. You think that could also continue through bilateral channels and also through the EU?
Absolutely. Bilaterally, the Indonesian government also has a scholarship program to send Indonesian students to the Netherlands. So it's not only the Netherlands contributing to it, but again, a two-way street. And from Europe also, there are several programs like Erasmus Plus and others that make it possible for Indonesian students to study in the Netherlands and in other European countries.
But Mr. Ambassador, are there any programs in the Netherlands that can contribute to the development of capacity and also absorb the Indonesian workers?
Right, so capacity building, of course, it's a priority for President Prabowo, but it's also a priority for us. So aside from studies, there are also lots of training facilities and courses, sometimes just for a few weeks, sometimes much longer, again in different fields. A good example maybe is the healthcare field. So there is a memorandum of understanding for cooperation between the Dutch Ministry of Health and the Indonesian Ministry of Health. And part of that memorandum of understanding is indeed for Indonesian doctors as well as nurses to be trained in the Netherlands and also to work in the Netherlands. So in that field we do see opportunities for absorption, if you want, on the Dutch labor market. At the same time, we're also looking, of course, for Dutch students and professionals to gain experience while working here and looking at opportunities for further cooperation.
Are there any other fields or sectors that you see potential in these days?
Well, I think in the energy transition there is so much to learn from each other. I think the wind energy sector has gained enormous momentum, but also in information technology, AI is a field that is enormously developing itself, and I've noticed that the young population that Indonesia has is very talented and is very tech savvy. So in that field, I'm sure again mutual cooperation is possible, and it's possible to intensify our cooperation there.
Right. In terms of people-to-people contact, Mr. Ambassador, which I think a lot would agree, and you would probably agree that that's also an important part in a bilateral relationship between two countries. In your opinion, what is the most effective way to increase people-to-people contact between our two nations? Maybe, for example, Indonesia is it's full of very avid football fans. We're very keen with our football here in Indonesia. How do you see the potential of sports maybe to increase P2P contact, especially football?
Right, great question, and there's a lot going on already, of course, in people-to-people contact. It has been so for a very long time. If you look at the Dutch population, 2 million people out of 18 million people have a connection with Indonesia. So they're really eager to not only visit Indonesia but also to be in contact with Indonesia and vice versa. I think the potential to do even more is probably in the field of social media, to get connected in that way. And football is a good example. If you look at the Dutch football players that have come here over the past few years, they have gathered an enormous following on social media, which is unheard of in the Netherlands, right? So it really shows how much more you can do here while making use of social media in a good manner. We're really happy with the enthusiasm for football. I think not only Dutch players come to Indonesia, Dutch players with Indonesian roots, but there are also in the Dutch national team a number of players with Indonesian roots that do really well, and I think they really bring something like creativity and speed. Tijani Reinders is, for instance, one of those players. His brother is now is going to play for Team NAS, but Tijani plays at AC Milan and is really very successful at the moment. And they're great examples for Indonesians and for Dutch youngsters who see them as a role model, and if you really get your mind to something, you can achieve lots of things. And again, the healthy lifestyle that also comes with playing football is something we are really happy to see getting so much attention here.
Right. Okay. What a very warm note to end on, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you so much for your time to chit chat with Antara today. I hope you have a great time here in Indonesia, and we are very much looking forward to a strengthened relationship between Indonesia and the Netherlands.
Thank you.
Baik pemirsa, demikian perbincangan saya dengan Duta Besar Belanda untuk Indonesia, Mr. Ambassador Mark Gerritsen. Terima kasih telah menyaksikan International Corner Antara. Sampai jumpa di International Corner berikutnya.